if you probably have heard the word Transcendentalism. It has been around for quite some time, and it became prominent in the United States in the early 1800s. Several Bostonians introduced that concept, and it became very popular in those days. Unitarianism, a lot of Unitarians became Transcendentalists. What does it mean? The basic philosophy actually has been around for a long time. Ancient scriptures of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Greek philosophy deal with the subject. In Hinduism, basic concept is Brahman. In Buddhism, is Nirvana. And in ancient Greeks had this phraseology called Ganoti Siotan. Now you may have heard some of these things before, but in all these things, transcendence is a concept behind experience of all that there is. For example, you know, the material universe made up of molecules and electrons basically is all energy. Even the solids are basically made of molecules which are made up of atoms and subatomic particles. It's all energy. And then we have the life, which we don't quite understand, but it is there, at least everywhere on Earth. Now all of this together, and your creativity, thinking, all of it together, it is, if you can experience this intuitively, that is considered to be transcendence. Now how does one do? Well, it depends on who is asking the question, who is trying to do. Now, many ancient saints of India as well as other parts of the world, even the modern saints like Ramana Maharshi of India and a few others, have been attained the status of transcendence, and they had intuitive understanding, or should I say, experience of transcendence. It's not intellectual experience; is the intuitive experience as opposed to intellectual. The difference between intellectual experience and intuitive experience. You know, for example, when you see suddenly a sight, it's not just part of it's only intellect, part of it's intuitive. Same thing with hearing, taste, sense, experience. They're all part intellectual, part intuitive. But transcendence goes beyond all that. It is a combination of all that, experience of oneness in everything. Oneness in everything. Occasionally, you might be walking in nature, experience that oneness in nature. That is an intuitive experience of maybe brief time. And whereas others who make effort of meditation techniques, variety of meditation techniques, they may actually experience it for brief times. When they do it more and more often, they may experience it even more. But the advanced practitioners, they claim to have more experience of this intuitive experience of oneness with the universe. And in Buddhists call it nirvana, so do the Indians. Now, in 1820s and 30s, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau were all a part of this Transcendental Club from 1836 to 1860. There literally was a organization called Transcendental Club in Boston area, in New England. So they used to discuss these concepts. And especially many of them are very, very highly intellectual people. And to give an example, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he graduated from Harvard at the age of 14 and had a master's degree at the age of 16. Even Henry David Thoreau also graduated from Harvard. And they also had a divinity training. They were ministers for a short time, but then they quit because their ideas were too radical for the normal church-going people, so they had to leave. And in fact, Henry David Thoreau went off on his own, spent a couple of years in the woods, and built a small cabin in a famous Walden Pond, and he spent some time and wrote his experience on that. And Ralph Waldo Emerson was a scholar. He wrote many essays and books. And after he quit being a minister, he had to make a living. How did he do? He was so well known, so there were subscribers to his writings. So every so often he would send them, and that's how he made his living. And also he gave talks throughout in the eastern part of the country, and for a while in Europe also. He was intellectual. He wrote many articles and books. If you ever read his writings, you would be impressed how knowledgeable he was. He was knowledgeable not only in all the American philosophies, but he was knowledgeable all the European philosophy, Greek philosophies, Egyptian philosophy, and the ancient Indian philosophies. Both Henry Ward Thoreau and as well as Emerson, they were knowledgeable in all the philosophies of the world. And in fact, he gave a talk at one time saying that you don't have to depend on Europe for your philosophical and intellectual thinking. You can do it right here in this country. And in fact, that's why Ralph Waldo Emerson is considered to be the first major philosopher of India, rather United States. He became famous for his writings and his thinking. And he was a major intellect of his era. And he was familiar with Greek philosophers such as Socrates and Plato, as well as Indian philosophies like scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and a few other things. And he was also not only writer, he was also poet. He wrote a whole bunch of poems, wonderful poems. Two famous poems are Gnoti Sioton, Know Thyself, a Greek phrase that appeared on Delphi Temple 4,000 years ago, and similar writings also appeared in Egyptian temples of that time, around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, similar concepts. So evidently ancients also had this idea, know thyself. That is the idea from Gnoti Sioton. I wrote a long poem. I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I made, I would say made, it's not exactly Doug Travers's idea, but he had to do it because I bought one of his sermons at an auction. I said, no, he had to speak on a topic I chose. So that is just the topic I chose. And he read the poem and he read it very well. I'm not going to read it, but I'm not a good reader of poetry. But that's a great poem he may want to consider reading. But however, I do want to read one poem. The title of this poem is Brahma. Brahma is, of course, one of the Hindu deities, but also Brahman is the entire universal consciousness. If the red slayer think he slays, or if the slain think he is slain, they know not well the subtle ways I keep and pass and turn again. Far or forgot to me is near. Shadow and sunlight are the same. The vanished gods to me appear, and one to me are shame and fame. They reckon ill who leave me out. When me they fly, I am the wings. I am the doubter and the doubt. I am the hymn the Brahman sings. The strong gods pine for my abode, and pine in vain the sacred seven. But thou, meek lover of the good, find me and turn thy back on heaven. Let me also read a few of the, before I do that, the transcendental word became popular in this country late 50s, because Maharishi Mahesh Yogi introduced transcendental meditation he came around 1960. He came to 58, and he trained thousands of teachers and teaching meditation and all over the world, and it became very popular. And he wrote several books. One of the books he wrote is called The Science of Being. Let me read excerpts from that. Pure being is of transcendental nature because of its status as the essential constituent of the universe. It is finer than the finest in creation. It is not its nature to be exposed to the senses, which are formed primarily to give experience only of the manifested reality of life. And it is not obviously exposed to the perception of the mind, because the mind is for the most part connected with the senses. The constitution of the mind is such that for any experience, it has to associate itself with the senses and contact the outer world of forms. And another part is, life expresses itself in different modes of living. That which is lived is the expression of life. That which exists is the expression of existence. That which is the expression of being. Existence, life, or being in the unmanifested reality of all that exists, lives, or is. Being is the ultimate reality of all that was, is, or will be. It is eternal and unbounded, the basis of all phenomenal existence of cosmic life. It is the source of all time, space, and causation. It is the almighty, it is the be-all and end-all of existence, the all-pervading external field of the almighty creative intelligence. I am that eternal being, thou art that, and all this is in its essential nature that eternal being. Being is life, it is existence. To be is to live, to exist. Being or existence finds expression in the different aspects of living, thinking, speaking, doing, experiencing, feeling. All aspects of life have their bliss in being. Now, let me also read one excerpt from Emerson. Good is positive. Evil is merely privative, not absolute. It is like cold, which is the privation of heat. All evil is so much death or non-entity. Benevolence is absolute and real. So much benevolence as a man hath, so much life hath me. For all things proceed out of this same spirit, which is differently named love, justice, temperance, in its different applications, just as the ocean receives different names on the seven shores when it washes. Jesus Christ belonged to the true race of prophets. He saw with open eye the mystery of the soul. Drawn by its severe harmony, ravished with its beauty, he lived in it and had his being there. Alone in all history, he estimated the greatness of man. One man was true to what is in you and me. He saw that God incarnates himself in man and evermore goes forth anew to take possession of his world. He said in this jubilee of sublime emotion, I am divine. Through me God acts, through me speaks. Would you see God, see me, or see thee, when thou also thinkest as I now think? But what a distortion did his doctrine and memory suffer in the same, in the next, and the following ages. There is no doctrine of the reason which will bear to be taught by the understanding. The understanding caught this high chant from the poet's lips and said in the next age, this was Jehovah come down out of heaven. I will kill you if you say he was a man. The idioms of his language and the figures of his rhetoric have usurped the place of his truth, and churches are not built on his principles, but on his tropes. Christianity became mythos as the poetic teaching of Greece and Egypt before. he spoke of miracles, for he felt that man's life was a miracle, and all that man doth. And he knew that this daily miracle shines as the character ascends. But the word miracle, as pronounced by Christian churches, gives a false impression. It is master. It is not one with the following cover and the following, and it is with the blowing clover and the falling rain. Now, these excerpts are part of his divinity school address at Harvard, and that became very, very controversial. After that, he was banned from churches because his teachings were so controversial, even though he believed in the Spirit of Christ in terms of transcendence. He did not believe in the way Christ and Christianity was portrayed of his day. And in fact, his talks were so controversial, even the Unitarians could not stomach him for a while after a while. That's why he became an independent thinker, independent writer, and a great scholar of his age and future ages. Now, let me read one other. I would like for you to join me in this. 531, the responsive reading. The name coined by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the Or Soul. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds.
As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul where we, the effect, cease, and God, the cause, begins.
I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine.
There is deep power in which we exist, and whose beatitude is accessible to us.
Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable.
It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whosoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur.
This whole health consists in the fullness of its reception.
Forever and ever, the influx of this better and more universal self is new and unsearchable.
Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one.
When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breathes through our will, it is virtue. When it flows through our affections, it is love.
This concept of Or Soul, the word, was coined by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is the same concept that he found in Hindu literature called Brahma. So he used this coin, the word Or Soul. People were kind of baffled by what is an Or Soul. He thought all our souls are connected to the universal soul, universal consciousness, the Or Soul he called it. So that was his idea of transcendence, realizing that universal consciousness was the idea of transcendence rather. Now, when people meditate and other things, people get a glimpses of such universal consciousness. Now, you might say, is it really real or is it fake? In the last 30-40 years, a whole bunch of neurologists went to work to understand it. So what they did was, they gathered brought in a few long-term meditators, Buddhist meditators, and put them in a room and explained to them, you meditate, and of course they were wired with gadgets on their head to do an MRI. Now, their instruction was, when they are up to, when they feel it, to that level of consciousness, they ask them to press a button so that they can measure what's happening inside the brain. Indeed, the time and again, the neurologists found different part of the brain gets activated when they're in deep state of consciousness, deep state of meditation, or when they achieve, I would not say altered states of consciousness, but more deeper levels of consciousness. They found that in many, many different meditators. Then it's not unique to the meditators. They also found some monks who spent good bit of time in prayers and contemplation. They measured such phenomena with those monks also, who spent time in meditation, rather contemplation and prayers. Then they realized it is measurable and real. And so now, quite a few hospitals in this country have these centers for, don't call it alternative medicine, but there's different names for different centers, For different types of patients, they teach them different types of meditation or prayer or whatever that's suitable to them to help recover from their illnesses. They find them to be quite effective. Quite a few major university hospitals, centers have such auxiliary facilities because neurologists find this phenomena real. And a neurologist called Dr. Deutsch wrote several books in this arena. And in fact, this particular field of investigation as well as research is called neurotheology. There are several books based on that. A few years ago, I did talk about that here. And James Austin, another neurologist, he spent 2-3 years in Japan and doing Zen meditation, became really quite adept and good at it. And then he tried to understand what it's all about. Then he wrote a long book, a very thick book, and several books actually. One of the books is called Zen and the Brain. He explains what all different aspects of the brain, and then what meditation does. And different. At the time, he was writing the book before his time. There was no MRI. They were only doing the EKGs and such measurements. So he found such changes in the EKGs of people who are into deep meditation. And this particular neurologist wrote several books after that. And Norman Deutsch, another neurologist, again wrote several books, and a few others also have done that. Now, the Buddhist monk Dalai Lama is very, very interested in that. So he provided some of the meditators for this testing. And now they have a conference either in this country or in Dharamsala, that is in India, where Dalai Lama, a whole bunch of neurologists who are in this field go and give their observations, whatever they're finding at the moment. So that has become a very popular conference. I read a few excerpts of such conferences. It's very interesting stuff. Now, these are hard to describe because very, very lengthy and very abstract. If you are interested, you may want to consider taking a look at it. Now, I'm going to close the talk with a particular reading. The knowledge of being as the ultimate and essential constitute of creation rises in all aspects of life to the unbounded status of absolute existence. Relative life gains more of the absolute status, and as a result, stability and permanence increase in the relative field. Energy, intelligence, and creativity rise to their limitless value, and the limited individual life gains the status of unlimited cosmic existence. This is the glory of the knowledge that being is the ultimate reality of creation. Experience shows that being is bliss consciousness, the source of all thinking, of all existing creation. It lies beyond relative existence, where the experiencer our mind is left awake in full awareness of itself without the experience of any object. The conscious mind reaches the state of pure consciousness, which is the source of all thinking. The Almighty Creative Intelligence, Absolute, is the source of all intelligence. Being is the source of all power. It is the source of all nature and of all the natural laws which maintain the different forms of phenomena in creation. This is the essence of Oversoul that Emerson talked about more than 100 years ago. With that, we end.